Hello and welcome to the 100 Day Art Challenge. This video will be number 84 of 100 and it's going to be slightly different than the normal video that I upload. I have said that before, but it has meant that I'm changing the medium. So instead of using acrylic, I'll use oil or watercolour, or that I'm changing from portraiture to landscape, or I'm going to do some abstract stuff digitally. It can mean things like that. That's not what this means today. The medium is oil painting, and I've done that before for quite a few. If you haven't seen them, look back at the challenge. There's a playlist on my channel, so you can look at the challenge in its entirety and look at all the oil painting I've done there. They're just still life for the most part, but there's a few landscape on there and it varies slightly. This is oil painting, but there's a couple of differences. First, the way that I oil painted previously was I would use linseed oil as my medium instead of white spirit or terps or some kind of thinner. I'd be using the flow enhancer that is linseed oil, normally used for glazing. I did interview an artist once and she said that she exclusively uses linseed oil for her oil painting, and that made me curious. So I tried it and I found that it gave the impression of thickening the paint that I was using, and I like that. There were a couple of issues. First, it meant that it prolonged the drying time. So if an oil painting normally takes a couple of weeks to dry, with painting with linseed oil it may take more than a couple of months. I still am not sure about my paintings, how dry they are or aren't, because they look shiny, and that's the second problem. The second problem is that the linseed oil as opposed to the white spirit makes it have this sparkly, glossy look. But otherwise, I really like the way it makes the paint feel. So this time I'm using white spirit, which means that I have this type of problem where I try to apply paint and instead it removes the paint. Because I've put down a ground colour and then I want to remove that ground colour to make light, but partly I want to add darker pigment to draw the subject. So I'm trying to do both at the moment. I tried to draw the outline of the subject, that didn't work. So I tried to remove the paint and that didn't work. So it started off a bit of a calamity. You can see the reference in the top left hand corner. This is an image from the series Deadwood. There's going to be about 5 of these images in a row because I really appreciated the aesthetics of the show, from the characters and the landscape. There's lots of things that I think I could paint from that program, but this time this is the subject, and it's not necessarily the main reason why this video is going to be different, being that I'm using a thinner instead of a flow enhancer. The main reason it's going to be different is that this is a failed painting, and I don't mean that I did the painting and it just doesn't look right, or I made the painting and I'm going to paint over it because I don't like it even though it's close to the reference. Instead, what happened was I used white spirit, as I said, which means that I needed to open my window to get good ventilation. When you use linseed oil, you don't need to do that. I'm fine with having my window open through the day. And what happened was that I didn't start painting until the afternoon, and then I did this that you're watching now with the window wide open, and then I had a phone call from a friend who I haven't spoken to for about a month, maybe a little less, and I was catching up with her It's actually thanks to her that I'm doing this challenge at all. So I've mentioned her a couple of times on this channel, my friend Petra. I was catching up with Petra because I've had some health issues. It's another thing you may have seen if you've been watching the daily videos. I was in hospital for a day. Not recently, just a couple of weeks ago, I think. Anyway, so I was catching up with her on the phone, but we were talking for a while, so I stopped painting. And then it went dark, and I didn't want my window to be open because I'd have moths and flies and spiders and all kinds of things just come in the window because it's light and the window's open. So I had to abandon the painting. This is the only video which I will upload from this challenge where I'm uploading an abandoned piece. What I will say is that once the challenge is over, which is only going to be 17 videos including this one, will be the end. So 16 videos after this will be the last video. Once the challenge is over, I will return to this piece first and finish it. I like the start of this painting. It's not failed because I mismeasured. It's not failed because of any big mistake outside of the window. Outside of the fact that I had my window open and couldn't keep it open because of the time of day. So I thought I would upload this video to show you how I started off this painting. This is going to be my submission for today, even though it's not finished, and it won't get finished until afterwards. But what you're seeing now is that I have white spirit on the brush, and I am removing the ground colour to try and establish where the light is hitting the face. And I like this process. There's another guest who I've interviewed, a chap called Ken Goshen, and he mentioned this process on an Instagram video recently. And when I saw it, I thought this is the type of painting I haven't done enough of, or done any at all really, is painting with a thinner. I've done a little of it, but not enough. Painting with a thinner and removing the paint in this beginning process so that you have established the tonal values early on, and then you can start to blend and create texture and depth with the colours. That's what I wanted to do. I haven't done that at all with for this challenge. I've certainly tried to paint with a thinner before and it's never worked out, so that's what I decided. For the remainder of this challenge there will be a few in a row of me doing that process. So the concept here is just to show you the beginning stages of this process. The idea was floated by a friend of mine to continue with this painting tomorrow as another submission, but I didn't like the idea of having one painting for two submissions. So instead, this is today's video, and tomorrow I will be doing this type of painting from a different subject, a different photo reference. I'll show it the same as I am now, but I will finish the painting as well as I can. It's another interesting factor is because I didn't get as far with this painting as I would have liked, I'm unsure how the remainder will go until I do it, because I'm not used to painting with these without using a lot of linseed oil. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm looking forward to it. It was just circumstantial today. Part of me wanted to create another piece and not show you this until I had the opportunity to finish it, but I'd rather just have a full disclosure video and show you what happened. I think it already looks quite interesting. Maybe not at this stage, it looks a little interesting, but especially by the end, it looks like an interesting painting. And I think that the source material is rich enough to tap into several times, and that's my intention, as I mentioned earlier. So Deadwood will be the theme for the next, 5 videos including this. And I think that will be it for that part of the challenge. As we're nearing the end, there are certain paintings I know I'm going to do, and I'm looking forward to presenting those, but this is part of learning art making that I've been hoping to do since art school, and I never had the opportunity of being taught oil painting. So everything that I'm doing here I've gleaned from either the video that I mentioned earlier by Ken Goshen or from interviews with different artists, just as the linseed oil idea came from an interview that I did with an artist called Sonia Buchalter. The interview series I'm talking about is on a YouTube channel called Painting Insights Podcast. It's also on every podcast platform, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. So if you like listening to podcasts, especially art podcasts, then check it out, because that is my main job. It feels as though I'm learning more from the interviews than I do from actually painting. There are so many great ideas shared and techniques that are explored in conversation that it's inspiring, it makes you want to paint, but it's informative as well, because it really does discuss tips, tricks, what goes right and what goes wrong, and it's exactly what I would have wanted from a podcast when I started painting 10 years ago. Now, my journey through painting has been quite arduous. If you're interested in that, then check out my Patreon channel. The link will be in the description of this video, because I do a video about my history, which goes through me making animation videos, painting superheroes, drawing for comic books, talking on stage, and all kinds of things. So if you're interested in that, it is £3 a month for my Patreon channel, and I have several videos up, but the one about my history is fairly recent. So that's that. In fact, the latest Patreon video I'm going to upload in the next day or so is based on part of this challenge. For part of this challenge, I did upload a life drawing session, which I did recently. I did 3 of them for this challenge, but one of them specifically, I paid the models for the video recording, which they offer, and asked for permission to publish the video on my Patreon channel, and they gave me permission, so that's something I'm looking forward to being able to share with my patrons. This means that, just like with this video where you can see the reference, on my Patreon channel you will see me drawing from life models that are there live on the video. So you can draw along with me, you can see the marks that I make and why I make them by looking at the reference, and instead of it being a still image like you're seeing in the top left, it's live models on a video. So it's interesting, it's fun, and it's a real privilege to me to have that. And I might publish more of the session as well, because they've offered me the whole video, and I did several drawings throughout the session that I'm happy to publish. But for now, I am in the process of editing, and soon I will be uploading that one as my latest Patreon video. So as you can see here, I have a light side on the left. I'm trying to establish a shadow side on the right, but it's gone a bit heavy. So I thought, whilst the pigment is on the brush, which is a bit of a hit and miss for me at the moment, I'm really not used to how this works. So I thought I will get the eye in on the left, and then I will try to thin out some of that shadow on the right, because I don't want a big dark patch on her head. That's not going to look good. But I do like the fact that there are touches of light on the right hand side of the face, and I do want to describe some of the shadow side on the right of her clothing as well, because some of that is completely black in the photo reference. So I'm trying to decide whether to put that in, how to put it in, and what's important at this early stage. And I'm not exactly sure myself. I just know that the little things that I have seen from painters is that they can get quite far at this point in the painting just by wiping away the light and blocking in some of the darks, just carefully like I'm doing here. And I think it looks interesting and decent the way that they paint, so I'm trying to achieve some level of that. Now, it might just be me, but I feel as though when I show you a video like this, it's much better because of having the reference in the top left corner. I wish I could do that more often, and I do explain on several videos why I can't do that. But on this occasion, because it's from a television program, I don't really mind sharing the reference. It's not something which I'm going to frame and sell. It's a study, it's something to learn from. It's almost like a master's study of this amazing image from this actor from the program. And so I don't mind sharing the image there. If the image is taken from someone in the public, I just feel that it's not fair to share the image of a member of the public who are unaware of me taking the photograph and haven't given permission. Another reason again why, as I was saying, the Patreon video from the life drawing session is so valuable in my opinion, and something which I would have liked to have seen early on in my early stages of learning how to make art and try to improve. So here we are. I'm going to try and blacken out and darken the right hand side of the clothing, and as has happened earlier, when I try to do that I find that I'm wiping away more pigment than I'm adding to the surface, so I'm just keep putting my brush into the pigment and trying to get something to stick to the bristles and to stay on the board. I don't know why this happens yet. If I find out, I will say it in the next video or whenever I do find out, but at the moment it just seems to be scrubbing it away. The pigment that I'm using to make this dark is raw umber and French ultramarine. I'm using Rowney Georgian paints because they are old, fairly cheap, and I'm saving my Michael Harding paints for when I improve and hopefully I'm selling paintings and can afford to buy more Michael Harding. But for the time being I'm just using the cheaper paints. Now you can see me scrubbing back and forth with the brush, so instead of using the brush with the grain of the bristles, I'm pushing against it sometimes just to try and ensure that this darkens and it doesn't remove the pigment from the ground. And it seems to have worked. As I said, I'm not sure why. Perhaps it's because there's too much white spirit on the brush. That's what I can imagine I've done wrong. But yeah, I'm not sure until I become more experienced and we'll be able to identify what some of the problems are that I'm having. It's still enjoyable. I still like this stage of the painting. I mean, I love the reference, how brown the reference is. So that's why I already enjoy this underpainting, is that to me this is really developing in quite a nice way and just showing how much you can describe with simple dark and light application. I'm hoping to do enough of this where I can achieve a very smooth and old-fashioned classical approach to portraiture and still life. The only reason I don't say landscape is that I feel as though I can keep portraiture and still life quite contained, whereas landscape I feel becomes quite complicated in how many different things you are looking to describe in light and form. I could be wrong there, but just the considerations that I'm making in my head of what I'd try to achieve are far greater than what I'm trying to achieve with portraiture, which is to block in the darks, to get some great texture and light in certain areas, to keep the paint thin, and to utilize this tonal strength of the source imagery. That could all be true of landscape painting, but in my head it seems as though you've got a lot more to contend with. Again, something which I will learn in time. So, as you can see, I've used this as a real-time video, and it may be a bit slow, forgive me if it is, but the reason I'm doing this is because the painting doesn't get finished. If it did, then this would have flashed by in less than a minute. You would have seen all this process happen. But that's just not the case, I'm afraid. But is it just me, or does this look stronger and stronger the more I add the dark? Because it leaves the former dark areas as mid-tone and the wiped away light as stronger light colours. What I don't capture on the video is me correcting the shadow on the forehead. But basically all I do is I get some a serviette and I wipe away the shadow from the forehead in order to push it back into the lighter area. But you'll see that in a moment, so I do have that on this video, even though the video recording doesn't capture it. I have it as a photograph that I'll add. Now I don't know if you can see from the reference there, but there are lovely curls of hair that I'm describing, and I'm describing them very loosely and very broad. It's not a wet brush at the moment, but all I'm thinking is that I'll cut into this with the background colour. So for now I've started to describe it. I've just noticed my phone is ringing, so this is me putting an end to the session. It's not where I want it to be, but this is where I left it. You can see I wiped away the forehead. It's getting there, and I will finish this video after the challenge. That's what I've done for today. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.